Hi, I'm Bo Humphreys, and this is the Personal Finance Show. This is week 14 of the COVID-19 series. I've been doing this for 14 weeks. I mean, it seems like a lot of weeks, but I mean, I did do 100 shows before this, but that was over a couple of years, and I only started doing weekly shows about halfway through that. But I don't know why this seems like, wow, it's been 14 weeks already. Today's June 28th, 2020, if you're listening to this in the distant future. This is the time of COVID. COVID-19 pandemic has locked us all down. You know, a lot of places that might have been free of COVID, they open up, and then somebody goes to a nail salon, and now 100 people are at risk. These are the things that are happening at this specific stage, is that everyone feels a little safe. What's interesting is mostly, I think everyone's just tired of staying inside and thinking that's a reason to go out again. But the virus doesn't seem to care about that. So we're seeing how this is all developing, and it really is bringing up a lot of conversations about human beings and what normal is and what we're supposed to be doing. And then, of course, with all of the unemployment and everything, and then there's protests, and there's Black Lives Matter because there's video of police killing black people, which was happening all the time, of course. But now it's like in our face, and everybody can't ignore it, right? So this is, it was like COVID pandemic into protests, and the world is in a bit of a turmoil right now. So I decided to come back out of sabbatical to I didn't know when I was going to come back. I knew there's episode on 101 that's actually sitting waiting to be edited that I recorded in September, and the guest, he's being very patient for it to come back to normal. But this is not the regular format of the show. This is specifically to connect. It's unedited. We're talking to people every week, and I want people to hear the conversations that I have. Like, this will be published in a couple hours, very likely. So today I have Danielle Desir. Welcome, Danielle.
Thank you, Bo. Pleasure. Nice to meet you from Twitterland.
Yes, right. We know each other from either seeing names, FinCon, which unfortunately I won't be attending this year. Maybe in a future year, we can talk about that in a bit if you like.
Yeah.
Then we're on Twitter and we interact, and everybody's like got nice positive messages, and then you learn more about someone and realize they have either a fantastic story or things they're doing to promote their network and to amplify voices, and we all just want to connect with people who are like-minded in that way and promote positive ideas, positive messages, different perspectives, and that's what this show is about, right? It's about telling stories, different perspectives, about your life, but also and money and how it's all connected, because you can't do anything without money, right, Danielle? You need
Oh, I
money.
say that all the time. Yeah, definitely. You need money to travel, which is what I love to do. So, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so Danielle, your main thing is your website and podcast are called The Thought Card, and you've written a couple of books about travel, yeah?
Yes, correct, correct. Yeah, so I love to talk about affordable travel and personal finance. Like, those are my two passions. And I started about 5 years ago, and folks were like, didn't really understand what I was talking about, because travel bloggers, they talk about only travel. Personal finance folks traditionally only talk about money. So it was very weird for me to come and do these two separate things together. But over
Seems
time, I
weird now
think,
that that people thought you were weird. It
right?
seems
Like,
like, right, like it's
oh,
all, everything has to do with everything, right? If
yes.
how can you travel just blindly? What, just put it on the credit card? Is that what they would say?
They wouldn't even talk about it. It's just like, just like it's not even a thing. I'm like, wait. But like, how did you
Yeah,
do it? Like, can we talk about the
seriously.
numbers here? Yeah, it was interesting. But I'm happy that like 5 years later, I'm still talking about the same thing. People are definitely resonating with what I'm sharing. So keep going. Like, even if people don't understand what you're doing, like, just keep going, because you'll find traction.
That's an amazing message to start off the podcast. I really like that. And you will be on the show in the future when we're back, and I can do the full format, starting with the earliest money memory and all the things that you've done, because you've done lots of things. Paying off debt is one of them, especially, and I like to talk about that because I am a registered insolvency counselor in Canada. Is what I do. I provide the mandatory counseling sessions for people who have filed bankruptcy or consumer proposal in Canada. Um, so I talk to people about debt every day, all day, and how to not get back into it, and how to change their life and their habits and their behaviors and their mindset to move forward and get a fresh start. So it's very important for people to hear debt repayment stories, debt change of mindset stories. But in the meantime, just go listen to the Money Nerds podcast with Whitney Hansen. That's a pretty good episode. A little bit about Danielle's story on there. And she chats with my friend Whitney, who's got a great podcast, and I'll put the link in the show notes for that. But today we're going to start with talking about your COVID story and how COVID-19 has impacted you. Obviously, travel is one of them. Tell me, so you're in Connecticut. That's where you
Yes.
live on the
Yes.
daily. Is that where you were when everything kind of got locked down? Tell us how Connecticut has sort of dealt with this from the beginning.
Yes. So I would call myself like a dual citizen because I live in Bridgeport, Connecticut, but I work in Midtown Manhattan. And
Okay.
before COVID, my work arrangement was 3 days in New York City, 2 days home. So I
Hmm.
got to see both perspectives from being a local
Sure.
CT and also, working in Midtown Manhattan. So I'm gonna bring it back to actually December
December. Okay.
because in December, my now fiance and I, at the time we were just boyfriend and girlfriend, we
Oh.
went. So that's another story we could dive into. There was an engagement during COVID, which is
uh,
pretty
yeah. Wow.
interesting.
Cool.
So back in December, my boyfriend at the time, we actually went to China, and that was our first time going to Asia, and actually his first like super international trip, like besides
Oh
going to the
wow.
Caribbean. And we actually had made a deposit and like planned this trip the year before.
Mm-hmm.
So it was since like 2018, it was booked, and 2019 we decided to go. And
You kind
at
of
the
have to with
time,
China. It's a big trip, right?
it's a
Yeah.
very big trip. Visas is a huge process.
Yes, the visas. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little bit. I was very uncertain because I just never had done a visa application before, even though I've traveled pretty extensively so far. So we went to China and we had an amazing, amazing 10-day experience there. We got back, and a couple weeks later, we heard, through YouTube and through like, not on the news yet, but they were talking about some, viral disease happening in China. And we
Mm.
heard that the city where things had started was Wuhan. And my boyfriend at the time, we looked at each other. We were like, "Babe, are we okay?" We were in Wuhan International
Oh, you were right
Airport.
there.
We
Oh
were
wow.
like, it's so funny because to go from New York City to Beijing, we stopped in Wuhan Airport
Mm-hmm.
for like a very short layover. And then we went off to Beijing, and then our trip started. So a couple weeks after our trip, we looked at each other. We're like, "Are we okay? Do we have any like symptoms or anything like that?" And we had like a Facebook group where we kept in touch with all the other folks in our tour. And I asked them, I was like, "Hey, is everyone okay? Like, no one feels like flu symptoms or anything like that?" And everyone said, "No, we're good, we're fine."
Okay.
So we kind of looked at each other. We're like, "Whew, we just missed a huge, like, we just missed
Yeah.
it." Like, okay. And, life went back to normal. January came. I went to London for a few days for Martin Luther King weekend, and that was fine. And February came, and it's starting to now get picked up in the news more and more.
Yeah.
And I had actually a trip to go to Podfest, which is like a really huge podcast conference in Orlando. And I was starting to feel uneasy because it was no longer a China pandemic or like, a China episode. It was spreading
Yeah.
to like Italy and to like Europe and the Middle East, and people were dying. And I said to myself, "Babe, I think that this is spreading. If it's spreading past Wuhan, and also based off my experience of being in China, there's so many people in China. There's so many people, and they're usually like these huge high rises because there's, they have a lot of land, but still they're building, high. So I could tell that if there's something that's spreading, it's going to spread across the continent
Real
and then spread
fast.
across the world real fast. And at the time, there were no airports being closed down. People were still flying. Things were just
Okay,
like,
yeah.
so it was a little scary for me. So I said to my boyfriend, I was like, you know what? I don't think I want to go to Podfest because I don't want to be exposed. And also not only, exposure in the flight, but also exposure at the conference where there's a lot of people. And I just wasn't sure. So I decided against actually everyone, like most people actually decided to go to the conference. And I said, you know what, I'm
Yeah.
not going to go. So that was really like my first decision where I had to make that I was like, okay, because of COVID, I'm going to change my plans.
That's interesting as a traveler for you to, because if that was like the only place you would be going, like, oh, I really want to go to Podfest, but oh, I don't want to travel because I'm not an experienced traveler. Well, you are. So, was it you just had this feeling, or you were looking at the data? Well, what really convinced you?
I had a feeling, I had a gut feeling. I was looking at the data, I was looking at how it was spreading. And I was also I felt like I was in Wuhan. I was so close. I was so close to the action that I
Okay, yeah.
escaped free, and I just wanted to honor that, like I wanted to make sure that I was being a good servant of like the opportunity that I was given, that I did not catch it when I was,
It sounds like a survivor. You had a survivor concept, the mentality, right? Like people
yeah.
who got like it's okay. It's not a very fair comparison, but the people who got bombed in like London, England, for example, during wars, right? They feel much more value for their life, right? Having just like the bomb was just there, right beside them, and so you were right there possibly in like the
In the
epicenter of
zone.
the
Yeah.
coronavirus at the
Yeah.
time. And so yeah, why would you to chance it again? It makes sense. So you stayed home.
Yes, yes. So I stayed home, and it was really hard to stay home because you see all your friends, like FOMO, and you're like, did I really make the right decision? And this was early. So this was like in, I believe, like early March. So things were just, or February. So it was just like not enough for you to feel like the huge effects of it. But
Yeah.
I remember even because I go to spin class when I'm down in the Midtown Manhattan, and even going to spin class, I'm like, we're all sweating together. Like we're all in here in this hot box. Like I was just really,
Breathing.
yeah, breathing and coughing on each other and just like weird stuff,
Our
just
as our
natural.
prime minister says, speaking moistly is what he likes to say. That kind of went viral, that one.
Oh,
But yeah, even that, right? We don't even realize how much it was being transmitted, probably at that time, right?
yes, 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 yes. So I was like super hyper aware, and I was watching like YouTube videos, and they actually took them down since then, but they were showing you YouTube videos from Wuhan, or
Okay.
allegedly from Wuhan, and you were seeing like graphic things happening there, and it was saying because of COVID. So I was like, whoa, no one's really talking about this, and I see this now, like I see it in my own eyes. So it just made me very aware and very sensitive to everything. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
March happened, and I actually talked to my boss because I have a full-time job, and I was like, are we like, anything that we're doing to like not have to come and commute into the city? And it was still too early. Like it was like something happening in Asia, not happening in our backyard. So
Not yet.
yeah, it was too early to make decisions, but everyone was very aware of what's going to happen. I also work for a medical institution. So that's also, it's a very, we had like town halls talking about this,
Okay.
and we actually started working from home March 9th. So that was my last day commuting to the city. And since then, I've been working remotely ever since, like full time. And I would
Was that
say, yes.
that's about a week before we did? Was that about a week before most other people in say Connecticut or New York started work from home too?
I think so. I feel like there were people because I remember being on Twitter and I was just like really anxious, and I'm like, can we close down already? And I think that was like a week, or
Mm,
maybe a week or two
sure.
after I started feeling anxiety. So I think there were a couple of phases. So there were people who were definitely closing up shop and working remotely a week or two ahead of me, but March 9th
Yes.
was the date that was like the last day, and we just kind of moved forward from there.
Yeah, I think for us, we just needed time to get equipment set up at home, and just get everybody moved. But I was about a day early myself, asking because we were talking about it. Oh, we're getting set up for this. I'm like, okay, great, rescheduling everybody to video because we were already set up for video in February. Funny enough, before any of this even existed, they said, oh, you can do counseling by video in circumstances where maybe somebody's sick or they moved away, and so we had that ability. So I was all set up for it. I was just a day early, and everybody was like, "Wait, why are you asking these questions? This is too early." And then the next day, we all got ordered to go home. The government
Yeah. And you know what
kind of shut things down.
I think what I've learned from this is that it's never too early for you to have your like, your signals to be like firing
Yeah,
off,
the radar.
Yeah, I just learned that it's like I had my radar since like February, March, right? And I understand that institutions can't just pull the trigger so fast
Yeah,
without, making
yeah,
sure
that
that
makes
they see
sense.
data and stuff like that. But now for sure, I know, okay, if there's something happening in, let's say, Tokyo or something like that, it's definitely gonna like spread really quickly. And I think that before we would just say, oh, that's something happening in Asia. That's not our problem, right? And that's not how the world works.
We're so connected now. We
So
can,
connected.
like, you can fly to Tokyo in 12 hours. How was that the length of your flight? You stopped through, wait, you said you
We
stopped
stopped
through
through
Wuhan.
Wuhan. Yeah. So our flight total, I think it was like 17 hours, but with like an hour
Sure.
layover in Wuhan. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just because it's a different sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not a direct flight to Beijing, right? Or maybe there
Right.
is, but not
We
from
didn't get it.
where you
Yeah.
were. Yeah, you
Mm-hmm.
didn't get that one. Yeah. Well,
Yes.
the direct flights are usually available. You can fly from Dallas and Houston to Sydney, Australia, right? Now it's the first time in a long time that they've been able to do that because of the jet fuel that you need to
Yes.
get around the world. So it's just fascinating now that we can get places so quickly, and then we wonder, right? And I really like what the New York Times just put out recently about how did we get here. And at that time, when they were like 15 people in Seattle have COVID, they're just extrapolating that there was probably about 2,000 people that had it. And that's fascinating to me because there's still so much that we don't see and we don't know about this. And so when, in my city we had 4 cases yesterday, right? Like, 9,000 cases in Florida, right? So big difference there. 4 cases, I should feel safe, right? But there's a city in Ontario where there were no cases, say last week, and then a nail salon. Turns out that somebody working there had it. 12 people have it, or 18, something like that, and 100 people who came in and out are being tested. So it can happen. Apparently, one person. There's stories out of South Korea where one guy goes to a bunch of different bars or something, and that's it. And then they shut down the world. So it's hard to know. Like, we can't just make these concrete decisions. Like, oh, 4 cases, that's great. Let me go and party,
Right.
or let's go and hug everybody again, right? Shake hands, which I don't think we'll ever be doing again. What do you think? Shaking hands?
I don't see that. I still see people trying to, like they do reach out, but then we're like, here's the elbow, here's the
It's like,
elbow, elbow. Yeah,
hey, we
exactly.
need a good fake out, right? Like, oh, wait a minute.
even from
Yeah.
even my mom, like I saw her yesterday on our run, and instinctively we were just kind of, I was like, oh, okay, kind of doing this weird, yeah, it was weird, but I was like,
And
mom,
that's
I
why
love you.
social distancing visits are actually worse sometimes than just doing a video because and my parents would say this. When my wife and my son stopped by just on the way back from somewhere, and they sat on the porch and stuff, they found it harder to see them go than when we talk on Saturday for dinner on video.
Yeah.
They're not, it's like that wasn't difficult, and
Right.
so it's like, yeah, because there's that connection. It's so close, and we could have had that, the physical connection that
Contact.
we apparently seem to need as human beings, right? I mean, it's one of those base things, right? Just even having the contact of another human being just in friendship, right? Or having a romantic partner. It's all this. These are needs that we have, and so
Yeah.
that this is something to acknowledge. When I like to think, oh, I can just do the rest of my life over video with everybody, right? Which seems like a
It's
nice solution,
harder.
but
Yes.
it's harder. It's harder, and I'm happy to have my wife and my son here in the house, and that's, I'm glad that we can do that, right? And I imagine, and I've heard that people who are single are having a hard time right now, really hard time. And people who depend on contact with others more so than people are very extroverted.
Hmm.
That would be a lot tougher too. So, this is a hard thing, right? But you locked yourself down early, and how are you feeling? Like, are you? I have lots of anxiety about state of emergency and going out during that. Not even necessarily about getting COVID or anything. Just being outside in a state of emergency seems like there's a lot of unrest and everything is happening. How are you feeling?
So I would say for March, April, and May, anxiety was very, very high.
Okay.
Like my family members would come and I would still be like, come over to do something in the house or something like that, like a backyard, maybe fix something in the backyard. And I'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
get away, like stay away. So I was having, I was like, I
Yeah,
was very, like, very,
I
very
understand.
paranoid. And my boyfriend at the time, because he was still my boyfriend until like mid May, we still have to get to that. So,
Yes.
uh, so my boyfriend at the time, he was still working. He's an essential worker. So he was
Okay. Oh
working
wow.
every single day. So here you have me who's working from home,
Oh,
my
contrast.
partner
Yeah.
who's
Wow.
working every day out there. So he would come home and I would be like, take off your clothes, go shower, wash your hands, like don't touch me, don't kiss me, don't do anything until you clean yourself. And he was complying, but I had that, like, he was that light that showed me, okay, like I'm still going out there, I'm safe and okay. And there is a risk, absolutely, having him out there. But that's a risk that we have to take because we have to continuously like take care of our household. He has to continuously work. He still has a job, which we were so lucky. So we have
Yes.
to work with each other here. So I think it's like I had a crisis happening inside of me, me
Mm-hmm.
and me being paranoid, me being able to stay home, and my partner being out there in the world, and I don't even know if he's safe. So that was a huge battle for me for the beginning part of the pandemic.
Yeah, my crisis is coming. You had yours. My son is going back to daycare July 6th, and my wife is going back into the clinical setting of a medical school. So she'll be working in a hospital again, which they took them both out on the same day in March, and so they've both been home. And she's been doing some remote schooling, but she's in clerkship right now, and so they need to be in the hospital, right,
Mm-hmm.
or a doctor's office, or wherever you can actually learn from a doctor. And so she's going back. So I'm gonna have the similar experience that you did, where okay, she's out there, she's wearing PPE all the time, and she's not working in with COVID patients necessarily. We'll see how the future goes. And he's in a very controlled setting in daycare, and kids apparently don't catch it from other kids, and they're less likely to get it too. So there's a lot of stuff that I'm just going to be able to experience in reality,
Yes.
that I've only been able to think about in theory for now, and that will maybe normalize this a bit more for me. Not that I necessarily want it to be normalized. I want to stay vigilant as well, and that I think because that is a risk, right? That's what we're seeing. Everybody's like, oh, it's no big deal. Let's go outside. Oh, it's no big deal. Let's all sit and have a dinner on a table inside a restaurant. So it's about figuring that out, and seeing what the effects are. It just hasn't been that
Yeah.
long yet, right?
It hasn't, but I think over for me the past 3 months of having extreme paranoia, extreme anxiety, having this dual, just the duality of everything,
Mm-hmm.
and also coupling with that fact that travel, I have decided, like we have decided that travel is not going to be something that we do. Like we're not doing train travel, we're not doing
No.
air travel, and I'm still not really sure how I feel about hotels or accommodations right
Yeah.
now. That is like so because we're not sure, we're actually saying no. Like until we feel like we like definitely do it, we're saying no to that. But what I've instituted is that every weekend, now that we're in summer, we said that we're going to do one social distance activity together as a
Okay.
couple. So
Yeah.
that for me is my ability, my one time a week that I can go out there, have some fun, making sure that it's going to be safe. So our first social distance activity, and we do it on a Sunday. It's a little bit more quieter on Sundays. and because of my partner's schedule. So we have gone hiking.
Nice. Yeah.
And that was really nice. We bring our mask with us, hand sanitizers, hand wipes, water, snacks. Like we came prepared. Like
Perfect.
we're not
Yeah.
playing around. So that was really that was great. And I think once you have one activity that you do and it's like, oh, this was fun. Like I still feel okay. We were prepared and we felt safe. We were able to do more. Every weekend we do something else
Bit by bit.
bit by bit. We've
Yeah.
also had a chance to visit a beach. And
Okay.
Connecticut beaches are not like Florida or like the Caribbean or anything like that, but they had a really nice boardwalk which allowed you to still like social distance there. So having just walking on the beach was one of our very short dates. And then we actually, because I'm also very big into like craft beer and cideries and wineries and stuff. So now 3 weeks, 4 weeks in, I'm actually like starting to go to one of these places. So last weekend we went to a brewery, and I think a part of it was I wanted to see how Connecticut is faring with all of these. Like,
Yeah.
are these places making you feel safe? What are their precautions? So we went to a brewery. It's Thimble Islands Brewery here in Connecticut, and and we were all outside, and they had pockets of like benches and areas, and by each bench there was hand sanitizers. And when you walk into the brewery, you have to have your mask on, so everyone has
Yeah.
their mask on. When you sit down, you have an option to take it off or not, but the waiter keeps it on the entire time.
Okay.
So that at least limits that. And then there's wipes, on the table, so you could wipe down your cups and things like that if you want to, your sides. And we tried it. We tried it, and I had a good time. I had a really good time. But it wasn't, like I mentioned before, it was a progression. It went from super
Yeah.
anxious in March, super anxious till April, May, and then going out hiking and doing things, and now being able to go. But also the places that we go now are outdoors. So the brewery was outdoors. We went to a actually a winery yesterday, and it was also outdoors. So I just haven't sat down at a restaurant since everything, but it was very gradual for me. I just didn't
Well,
just jump into it. Yeah.
outdoors is safer, right?
Yeah.
The statistics are that you have to be sort of in a contained setting and for a lengthy period of time
Hmm.
necessarily to be able to take in enough of the virus, right?
Yeah.
So that is the best place to start. I just feel like you're like a month ahead of me on all this stuff. Like I'm seeing into my future, right? Because yeah, like I've been running, so that's great. I'm going
I
outside.
have,
I'm running
yes.
around people, right? So
Yes.
that was my first foray into the real world. And this, I really feel like have you read or seen Ready Player One?
No, I
The
haven't.
book. No, yeah, it's
No.
just I feel like the Oasis is the virtual world that I'll live in or interact in. I kind of feel like I've been in the Oasis for a little bit, minus all of the virtual reality parts of it. So yeah, it's so you're not obviously you're not traveling, but you just did a big trip. But do you always have a fund for travel? You're always planning for the next one. Were you doing that when you came back from China already?
Yeah, so I always have a fund for travel and I keep it very separate and I save for travel automatically every single month. So for me, I
Hmm.
always want to have money in that account so I can make a
Sure. Yeah.
decision to hop on a flight deal because I love cheap flights. And it's so funny because usually I'm the kind of planner that plans trips 6 to 9 months ahead of time. And for some reason, 2020, I only had London in January and Madrid, where we were supposed to get engaged, in May, and
Ah.
nothing
Okay.
else. So it's so funny. 2019, we
Interesting.
had China like a year ahead of time booked, and we knew we were going to China. But for me, this year was just one in January, one in May. So I don't have those experiences of people like canceling their flights and having to harass all these tour companies and things like that. So
Yeah.
it's very different for me, which is very surprising.
Well, it's interesting because you've said in other interviews that you want to travel so you can write and talk about it, right? And
Yes.
so you want to be going places. And, it's not like I'm going to take a year off or something like that. Do you just have other things going on, or like other things taking up your energy and time that you hadn't got around to planning the say one in the fall or in the late summer or something like that?
I kind of feel like I don't know, like maybe there's like a higher power out there who knew like there's no
Yeah.
need to like plan out that far. But we only had that one trip in Madrid to
Mm.
May, and American Airlines called us, told us that we'll refund you your money like before the trip.
Oh, that's so nice.
So
We don't have
yeah.
that rule in Canada. In Canada
Oh,
and the UK, we don't have a refund rule. We got a voucher we were going to Italy in August with the baby and his cousin, who's only a couple of months older than him. Their first trip on a plane, sitting on our laps and stuff. And so they canceled the flights, but they're doing 2-year vouchers now,
wow.
which I guess is reasonable. But I don't know, what are we going to do, and when are we going to be able to fly again? When are we going to feel
Right.
comfortable flying again? We don't know. And I'm lucky. I still have my jobs, and I obviously, I filed for insolvency 11 years ago, so I've rebuilt my finances pretty huge in the last 11 years. So I'm good. But a lot of people are not good, right? They need that money,
They do.
and they could use that. And it's good that you have that policy in the States, or at least a lot of the big airlines would do that, right?
Yeah.
I just wish we had that. I don't think we could do a whole episode about this, but I don't think the airlines should use individuals as bank accounts. That's not good, right? If you compare it to any other thing, if I put a deposit down for something that was going to be built for me, and they said, "Oh, we're not going to build that for you, but can I hold on to it so that if I build it in the next 2 years, I'll get it to you?" That makes no sense. No one would
Doesn't.
agree to that.
Yes.
Why does it make sense in the airline industry, right? Okay, so I'm glad you got your flight back for that, and then you didn't have anything else, but yeah, this money's still coming out into the travel fund. Is it just
Yes.
building up, building up? It's got nowhere to go. Is that what's happening right now?
That's what's happening. I looked at my account the other day and I'm like, wow, this is the most it's ever had because I'm constantly
Yeah,
on the road. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe I can afford that trip to New Zealand one day soon, when things free up.
sure.
So I'm
And that's
excited.
what's good, right? We silver linings in all of this,
Yes.
right? Is that you can plan your big trip, right?
Yes.
The one that's always on the last one on the list for people is
Is the
like
most
you
expensive.
know
Yeah.
a fly to the tip of South America and take the boat to Antarctica, right? That's the
Amazing.
that's like the
Amazing.
last one on the bucket list. So maybe some people will be able to do that one this time around. But we should acknowledge, of course, this is a very privileged thing to be able to even talk about,
Yes, for
right?
sure.
To have a travel fund, to have the ability to do that, to make enough money to do that, and to take care of. Do you address? I haven't got around to reading a lot of your blogs or listen to early podcasts. Do you address how people who maybe can do what you do without having access to funds or build it up over time? Like, do you address the privilege aspect of travel?
I do because I would say when I first started, like early in my career, I was saving $25 a pay period. That's every 2 weeks, and that's all
Mm.
that I could afford.
Yeah,
So,
wow. That's not
and
much.
yeah, not much at all, but I was still able to find creative ways to make it happen. And I've grown a lot in my career and in my finances since then. So I think I talk about it less and more of like maximizing and optimization now. But
Mm-hmm.
the beginning years were very, very, very. The reality of it was just I didn't have that much going on, and I just needed to
Sure.
make do with what I had. So yeah, I
And lots of debt,
definitely
right?
lots of debt, and making those decisions like hard sacrifices to get
Mm.
here was very, very important.
Yeah, so people can go back to
Yes,
early
for sure.
it's thethoughtcard.com. Is that what it is?
Thoughtcard.com. Thoughtcard.com. Yes.
Thoughtcard.com, not
Yes.
the podcast is called the Thought Card.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay, so thoughtcard.com, people can go back to early blogs if they're like, if you're in a position where you're like, I don't even have more than $20 a week, or $25 a paycheck to save, and you're saying I can travel on that somehow, and turns out you can. So that's good. It's good to have those examples because yeah, I mean as Jay Money would say, he wishes he could sort of just give his money away so that he could go back to being the struggling guy again. Now that he's hit the million or whatever his target was, he feels like maybe people don't take him seriously anymore, right? Or listen to him. It's a very interesting situation where you're revealing your net worth over so many years, or your plan, or your journey, and then once you make it, people they don't want to listen to that anymore. Well, I mean, to me, that's inspiration. And just go back to the beginning then. Do you
Yeah,
have that
and I
experience?
Well, I still think that people find me approachable and relatable, even though
Sure.
I've grown a lot in my career. And I think, and just for those who want to really, who maybe like they're struggling with mindset work and like figuring out how to travel, or how to save money for travel, I did write a book called Affording Travel that touches on my step by step process because I did understand
Perfect.
like time and money are the biggest hurdles holding people back from traveling. So I broke down the time. Time is actually the next book, but the money part is the book that I
Okay.
wrote.
Okay.
So there is a resource for those folks. But I think that's why
Sorry about that. We just had a little disconnection. I'm not sure exactly what happened. Yeah. What were you saying? Do you
yeah, so
remember?
yes, I remember. So I was saying that that's why for me it's really important that I have a blog and that I have a place to document my journey is because I want to be able to go back to those beginning times or to have people see the journey and the transformation and to understand the
Yes.
things that I've done that have helped me along the way. Because I think a lot of us, we're just trying to figure it out. Like we're getting tips from each other. But at the end of the day, there's no like, roadmap and you're like, this is your path to success. So we're really just trying to figure it out here. So having a blog has really helped me to see how much I've come and to document where I was. Like I still have like I don't think it's public now, but I have blog posts where I would do quarterly updates for my student loans. And one of the quarterly updates was like, this is me at
Okay.
50,000 due. Like I'm still at 50,000. I would talk about my feelings and how I felt about it. And I could always go back to that. So documenting your journey is very powerful. And not only for you, but also for the folks that you're serving in your audience.
That's that. You had 63,000 in debt,
Yeah.
right, to
Yes, I
start?
did.
Yeah, that's just a huge number to go through, and yeah. So and we can again get into that in a future episode. I wanted to talk about the group that you started called and website and called and it's a company, right? Or I mean,
It's grown.
is it like an LLC
Yeah,
or
yeah,
are you
yep.
like is it yeah, yeah. I mean, I know a little tiny bit about U.S. Business structures. So it's the WOC podcasters, Women of Color podcasters, and the Facebook group is how big now?
3,000 members, over 3,000.
So three. So that's like, is everyone in the Facebook group like an official member in another way too, like on the website, or is it just Facebook group and then there's like other membership types too, or how does it
Yes.
work?
So there's the free Facebook group, and it's a very inclusive space. So, of course, we cater to women of color podcasters, but we say any
Mm-hmm.
woman can join. So you don't have to be a woman of color. But recently,
Perfect.
over the past 2 years, actually inspired by this pandemic, having a lot of free time and ability to create and see what needs were needed to be met, I created an actual membership. So the membership has
Oh.
like resource library, it has accountability calls, like just a lot more touch points for us to really help each other and grow and uplevel our podcast.
Mm-hmm. And I'll play devil's advocate for a sec. Not that I don't understand why, but I want to hear
My
your
reasoning.
words as to why this is an important space to have. Just to say it in your words because that
Yes.
it's good to
Okay,
hear.
so let's talk stats. And these stats were from 2018. So in 2018, 22% of podcasts were hosted by women. So
Okay,
8 out of 10 were, hosted by men. So that's pretty
I'm gonna guess mostly white men,
mostly,
right?
yes. So I'm going to guess
Yeah.
that too. And it's so funny because they don't really have lots of stats that really go into like the pockets and ethnicities and races, but they
Really?
don't
Eh?
have that many.
Yeah.
So that's that. And this is data from 2018. So 22% are from women. And then they said
Okay.
women of color is less than that. They didn't even they couldn't even publish a number.
They didn't even have a
It's
number.
like
Okay.
they didn't even
Wow.
have a number. So that to me is staggering. So most
Mm-hmm.
podcasters are typically seen as white males, and there is a pocket of women podcasters, and some number of that is women of color. But for me, why this space is so important, it goes back to 2018 when Spotify had released a opportunity called Sound Up Bootcamp, and they were looking for aspiring women of color podcasters. All you had to have is an idea. And from that opportunity, the group was formed. It was pretty much a hashtag on Twitter. I love Twitter, but just seeing so many people talking about this opportunity. And later down the road, it came out that there were 18,000 applications to this one opportunity. So you have, and this was all US
Wow.
based. This was a US based opportunity. So you have over
Okay. Yeah.
18,000 women of color who had an idea to start a podcast, to create a podcast. They needed guidance, they needed resources, they needed funding to make this happen. So for me, that for me was very exciting. And I was shocked because when I was applying for this opportunity, I thought, how many of us are there? If you look at Apple Podcast Top 100, you could maybe count on one hand how many people of color that you see, and maybe how many women of color would be like
Yeah.
less than that, right? So I just
Yeah, just scanning
just
the cover
scanning, just
photos,
scanning
right?
cover
Of
photos.
all the yeah.
Yeah. So I just didn't think that the demand was out there, that there was an interest. And at the time, I wasn't really listening to that many podcasters of color either. So I just thought that it just didn't really exist, or we just weren't really into that. But that's not true. And the opportunity from Spotify definitely showed me that. And also the fact that we've grown these past 2 years from like 0 members to 3,000 shows me that there is a
Wow.
need, there is a space. Representation totally
Yeah.
matters. And there's just a different feeling when you feel comfortable and you feel like people who look like you or who are in the same ethnic backgrounds or just who you can relate to are doing the same thing. It's so inspirational and it's just a different feel. And it's encouraging too, because again, outwardly, we're not represented well outwardly, but we're still here. And there's a lot of people of color who are podcasting. They're just not highlighted in the top 100s on Apple Podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, sure, a lot of that is systemic. A lot of that is because of all of the reasons why there's protests right now, right? The example I like to give is whether you feel, if you're a white person, if you feel like you're explicitly or implicitly racist, hopefully you're not explicitly racist. God, I don't even know what to say to that person. But implicit racism is really, really hard to make go away because it's built up over hundreds of years, and there's something programmed into our brains that looks at a boardroom, let's say, a boardroom full of professionals. If it's all black people, something in our brain says there's something up with that, right? And we may not even know that that's happening, but something seems interesting, right? Is this why is this is not usual, right? And that's the kind of stuff that we need to recognize and question. And why does it feel that way? Why and that's the way it's maybe to help people who don't think who say, oh, I'm not racist, or I don't see color, all those things that do not help,
Right. Yeah.
right? Help them sort of understand that there's still a bit a long way to
Yeah.
go,
Yeah. And I would also say that, like,
right?
I think most of us as kids, we there's a point where things changed forever, right? Because there's this innocence and we just don't know what that
Mm.
means. And then we kind of like cross the other side and now we become part of the, larger society. So it's,
Okay.
for me, I think that WC podcaster space is so important and so critical. And I hope that it lives even beyond the efforts that I do. Because again, having safe spaces for people to be themselves, to create, is like so, so, so important. And I think I think like since the whole, COVID and all of these like protests happening, we've actually had a lot more interest from folks who don't identify as women of color, and they're just like, hey, we want to be part of this, we want to be part of your community. And I think that from the jump, like from the
Yeah.
beginning, I've always been an inclusive member, a leader. So I'm always open for open arms, and let's have those tough conversations. Like we've had conversations in the Facebook group where we have to talk about, the George Floyd situations and all of the racial injustices, and that's important, because a lot of our community members are dealing with that. And you might not find that in other podcasting groups and podcasting spaces. So yeah, that's my response.
Okay, good. I think you just said something great. It all broke up, so I hope that it all got recorded, because I heard the beginning of it, but I didn't hear the rest of it.
Okay.
and I don't know how to respond, but it
It was
sounded
good.
good at
It
the
was
end.
good. Yes.
There. Okay. Yes. So yeah, I mean, we're talking about how important it is to have safe spaces, and positive. To me, it's just about positive places, right? And we talked about FinCon briefly earlier, and there's been a lot going on with that. I'm just gonna guess you're not going this year.
I'm not going this year.
Is that accurate?
Yes. Yes. I'm not
Yeah.
going this year.
And do you want to talk about why, or
Yeah.
yeah,
So
cool.
I'm a heavy Twitter user, and I actually saw the comments that the founder had put on Twitter when it was happening. So I was just there, like
Hmm.
I was there, and for
Yeah.
me, it was pretty shocking and pretty insensitive for me
Sure.
to see that, because I understand that not everyone has the same realities, right? However, being empathetic and just the words that were said was just like, I remember almost was in there a couple times, was just like,
Yeah.
gosh, that stung like a dagger. Like, it's, I understand, again, like not everyone is facing the same things right now. Like, we, for example, us two, like we still have our full-time jobs, so our perspectives are very
Yes.
different during this time from folks who don't have, or furloughed or things like that. But I can still sympathize, and I hope when I'm speaking that I'm not speaking from making people feel diminished or making people feel bad about their situations. I definitely understand. I understand. But the comments that I saw were just daggers, and it's very hurtful and very raw, especially during that
And
time.
yeah, and if they would have been in isolation, and if he would have come out and said, "Oh wow," like immediately not tried to, as my friend Tanya says, it's the doubling down that hurts people the
Yes.
most. Doubling down on these insensitive things that they say, um, but it wasn't in isolation either. A lot of other things came up in terms of not paying people the
I saw
same
that too.
amount of money. Whether there's some ambiguity in there or not, it was an issue, right? It was an issue that came up, and then there was some misogyny happening there as well, and another issue, where somebody brought that up, and then they got shut down, and then they felt afraid to say things. So it was a conglomerate of things enough that. I don't feel it's a comfortable place for me to be.
Yeah.
I don't want to be there. If people, if not everyone is welcome, or other people are made to feel unwelcome, and then it also made me question as to whether I was getting treatment, special treatment, because I'm a white male too, right? I just thought back to a couple of things, and it's like, am I getting these opportunities because of that?
Mm-hmm.
We're in a room full of a diverse community. Am I being picked out of a crowd because of the color of my skin? And that's upsetting. In a place where I've met, because I'm in Canada. We have a lot of diversity, of course, but I don't have a lot of black friends, right? And I've had black people on the show, but if you scan through my thing, and because I've been posting them on Instagram, I'm making a Instagram account, and it's everybody's face. That's what the podcast cover is, right? And if you look at the beginning of my show, it's very white, right? And bit by bit, trying to make it not so white, but it's a reflection, like you said. People live in their own bubble. I don't think you said bubble, but I'm saying it. And people have their own reality, right? And so, yeah, in the founder's world, he was just seeing what's on the media and saying, "Oh, it's all overblown," and and the almost comment was, I think, and it almost makes me feel bad or
Right.
whatever, right?
Right.
Which is, like you said,
Yes.
daggers, right? That's daggers for anybody, right? Just like, um, you know, things you just don't say anything, right? Keep that to yourself, and he should have been doing the opposite, and finding that empathy, finding whatever was inside of him, whether he has completely different values than everybody else. That there's a way to not be like
Yeah.
that. We all have things going on in our heads. They might be from the past, right? There's the way that you think or were brought up to think, and then there's the things that you actually do. And yeah, like I grew up with lots of things, lots of racism, right? Just because that the community I grew up in, it wasn't necessarily explicit, but there's a lot of explicit stuff that people didn't even realize was explicit.
Mm-hmm.
And I only realized once I went somewhere else. So, there's just acknowledging that as you go forward, right? And in a way, it's good that this is all coming up so we can talk about it more, and we need to continue to talk about it more. But it's not good that all of this is happening to people. And I don't even know what to say about the hangings that are happening,
Mm-hmm.
that they're calling suicides. Well, I don't even like. I don't. I feel like more should be being spoken about that, and yeah, it's all kind of sad, isn't it?
It is
Let's
very,
I don't end this on a sad note,
yeah.
but yeah, this is where we're at, right? Yeah, so women of color podcasters, um, this is a fantastic thing that you're doing. So
I'm so
thanks for
excited.
thanks for putting this together.
Yes, yes. I'm really excited for what's to come, for the community, for all of the members. Like, we do have a membership, but the Facebook group is just showing that there's so many voices, so much interest, so much intrigue in the stories we have to tell. So I'm just really excited for the work that's continuously being done, and that I'm able to play a role and have a part in that. It wasn't something that I wrote it actually on an application for that Spotify originally to have this community, but I never thought that I would be the leader of that community. It really wasn't on my cards, but here I am. I was, chosen to do this. So I'm enjoying it and just really trying to connect with more podcasters and find more opportunities to benefit the community as a whole.
I like the story of you not having a podcast of your own until you
Did
created this group,
not. Ugh,
right?
yeah. I was just, yeah, I literally
But
wasn't. I again, like, I wanted to have a co-host. I had all these limitations and beliefs, but again, I think that's the beauty of having a community that can be there to push you, to support you, to encourage you, to say sometimes things that will make you question, like, what am I really doing here? But that's just the wonderful part of having a community that you can turn to.
yeah, and then it's we need people like you to be leaders, right? Like to take those opportunities to see that Spotify contest. It was a
Yes, it was
contest, yeah.
contest. Yep.
And to see that opportunity in there, and not like it wasn't I'm going to make so much money opportunity. It's like I didn't know this existed, and it doesn't look like Spotify is doing much more with it, except for what the 10 people
Mm-hmm.
that did they end up getting podcasts. By the way, do you know about how that worked out? And did they get?
I haven't kept in touch with what has happened since then. And I think, but
Yeah,
it's like 10 people, but there were 17,990 people who are still like, what
yeah.
do we do here now?
And some of those,
Are in the
hopefully, are
group.
the ones in your
Yes.
group. I imagine, right? But that there's still another 15,000 people hanging out somewhere, who are either maybe have podcasts or are
Yes.
interested or just have the
Yes.
idea. And it's like I've said, if I have an idea, I have a million examples of people like me who are doing
Yes.
it. Right, so there's nothing like that stopping me from doing it. The only thing that's stopping me is my desire. And I've had various guests on. One of my friends, Hamza Khan. He said he would have loved to listen to a podcast when he was younger and heard another Hamza Khan talking about how he was successful in marketing and how he was making it not being a doctor or a lawyer like his parents wanted. He needed that, and you don't know how much you need that kind of thing until if you don't have it, right? Until you miss it, right? And I don't know what it's like to not have that. And I don't need it. I don't need any more of it. It doesn't have to be 80% white men in podcasts. Please, why? Right? Why do we why why is there still this desire for this homogeneous society? It makes no sense. So, let's keep talking about this. Let's build. I want your group to be I want it to be all of
18,000.
the
Yeah, I'm
18,000
I'm gonna,
to
yeah, for
start.
sure.
That's just the start,
Just the
right?
beginning.
I'm definitely letting know all the women of color I know who are podcasters to
Join
do
us.
this. Like if they don't, they're not already in it. Maybe they're already members, and I just don't know, right? So yeah, this is awesome. And just to recap, the first book was on Iceland. Is
Yes,
that right?
first book is an Iceland travel guide.
Second book of travel
Yep, affording
affordability.
travel. Yes, yes.
supporting travel, and then you're working on books as whenever you
I
can.
am. I am. During the pandemic, I wrote my third book, which is Traveling with a Full-Time Job. So just kind of
You already
just
wrote
already
it.
written, just getting beta readers and
Okay,
yeah, making
that's
productiveness
great.
during this time.
Yeah, good for you. Like I look back to my days with unmedicated ADD, and I'm just happy that I can do something like make a couple of podcasts. I have a whole list of things I'd like to do, but I'm trying not to be too hard on myself. But I very much admire people like yourself who can just like, I'm gonna write a book, I'm gonna do it, right? I'm gonna start this Facebook group, and I know you were scared. I know you're talking and crying to your mom, as you say in many
Yes.
podcast interviews, which I listened to over the week. You know, it's uh, it's not always, it's especially if it's not easy. That's probably when you should do it, right? It's especially if you feel like you're being called to something, but you don't understand how you're going to be able to pull it off. What's the worst thing that could have happened in this case, right? You start this Facebook group and there's 3 members, right? Like that's, and then what?
We found each other. Yeah, the three of us found
Right,
each other.
exactly.
So, yeah, let's keep it
Right?
going.
So yeah, like so just start the thing. If it doesn't cost a lot of money, especially, just do
Yeah.
it. Just do the thing, and if you're not spending that much time on it and it's not happening, then fine, you tried it and at least you know.
Right.
But it could turn into something like what yours did. And then you're writing these books and just paying down the debt, which we didn't talk about, but it's always fascinating when anyone is able to pay off that kind of debt. And you have your own house, which we didn't even mention, right?
Yes. Yes. All
Yeah.
the things, all of the
So
things.
there's a lot
A
of
lot of
things, right?
things.
And so again, so yeah, I think we had one little internet. The internet is a mess today. My previous podcast, or Dear Ruby podcast earlier today, we had connection issues, and then it actually just cut us off right in the middle there. So I'll try to cobble those together, and then we can get this show out, unedited as it should be. I'll have to do that tiny bit of editing, unfortunately. But otherwise, it was really great to have you on the show. This is really it's really good to hear. Um, you just have such a great story, and you're just doing everything you can. It's also positive to me. I love having all this positivity on the show. Um, that's I want to promote positivity. I also want to promote overcoming adversity, and I want to promote amplifying other people's voices and what you can do to do that. And that it's like anything is
Yes.
possible, right?
Yes.
You have to try to make a bit of a difference. I'm doing what I can. I'm trying to do this. I came out of retirement to do this, and it's not always easy to get a show out weekly. But having conversations like this is what propels me forward. So thank you so much for
Thank
being
you
here.
for the opportunity. We are now friends, very good friends now. I'd love to continue
Yes,
to stay in touch.
yes, absolutely. And yeah, again, when I'm doing full time, when I have the thought or the concept of how I'm going to do this again, it could be just unedited like this again. We just do what we do, right? And we deal with the ums and the all the things that might need to be edited that I'm just ignoring right now because it's not as important as just getting the information out there. And that's a lesson in itself, right? If you keep holding yourself back for perfection, you're just gonna
Hold yourself
it's never
back.
gonna
Yeah, you're just
happen.
holding yourself back from your full potential.
And now 14 shows happened where there weren't going to be any, and I've gotten to connect with old friends and new friends and talk about all these things that are happening in the world right now, and hopefully people are listening and it helps. And I know I've heard from some people in my community who are very much appreciating these shows. So it's good to be back, and it's good to have you on. So next week, I don't quite know who I have yet. That's the thing about doing this weekly and not having a lot of time to do a program, right, and have a schedule and have everything up ahead of time. Is that I may have somebody for next week, or hey, maybe next week's going to be a quick solo one on my end, or I just call up somebody who I know is available to talk, and we'll see how it goes going forward. But I want to keep doing this every week as long as I can. Um, it's important to use your voice if you have one.
Well, thank you,
So
Bo.
until then,
Yes.
I'll see you next week, and Danielle, we'll see you again in a future episode. And so, cheers, everybody.